There's actually a lot of things about the red pill I figured out on my own. Just through years and years of intense introspection and lots of conversations actually with young ladies I tried to date and young ladies I was just plumb straight friends with. I actually find it really interesting at the fact that, there's still young men who still privy this type of content, still going to the manosphere, still confused. I kind of figure that everything that needs to be said has been said, and at this point now we need to learn what we need to do with this information. Start moving towards a little bit more, I guess you could say, some solutions or some coping mechanisms, which I think might need to be its own video discussion by itself. It's interesting, right? Because I was thinking about, all the different things I kind of figured out on my own, during my journey of trying to understand why young ladies wouldn't want to date me despite the fact that I was everything that I said they wanted. And one thing that I had recognized pretty early on, which I thought was actually really interesting, was this phenomenon of how young ladies all kind of funneled up and started chasing after the same guy. I remember back when I was on the lacrosse team, it was back when I was like, I think 15. I thought it was really interesting that these girls who had been friends since the previous school year were having a little bit of friction, a little upset with each other over this one dude who was on my team. And he was an alright guy. I mean, we weren't really close or anything like that. He was just pretty cool. But I could acknowledge that he was handsome. I mean, he was clearly handsome to them at the very least. And so I thought it was peculiar at the fact that these two girls would fight each other over the attention of a dude that honestly probably just would have only wanted to bang them out and not talk to them anymore. By that same token, I found interesting still was one of my greatest foes actually, who's also on my lacrosse team, because I also had a good amount of female attention. In fact, one girl that I was interested in, ended up dating him for quite some time, and he ended up cheating on her numerous times. It's rather interesting. In fact, if you guys have previewed my channel, you would have known I actually sat next to one of the girls he cheated on his girlfriend with in my Spanish class. I bring this up all the time because it's freaking hilarious, right? There's another guy I remember. It's interesting. It's really interesting. I know a lot of people who follow me are atheists, but I do believe, God has granted me one strong ability, and that's a very powerful intuition that I have, right? It very seldom really ever works out for me, unfortunately, but I hope to change it in the future and use it correctly. I had this really strong intuition about this one guy. I forget his name, because I can't remember his name, we'll just call him Shane. And I remember this guy, Shane. I always felt this odd inclination around Shane. I actually never talked to Shane. I was never really around him, but every time I saw him, just something felt off, and Shane ended up doing some pretty grimy stuff to some ladies that were close to me. I wish I had used my powers to convince these young ladies to not talk to Shane, but I mean, what can you really do, right? You can't really stop that. And, it's interesting that, this guy Shane was so popular and all these girls funneled up to him. And it was a phenomenon I had really noticed, just the amount of women just kept going to the same guys, despite the fact that these guys kind of sucked. And so that's what kind of leads us to us talking here. And when I was younger, it's funny how it's kind of spun out of control, but I remember way back when on YouTube, I was the first person, I'm not struggling my own ego here, but I was the first person I knew of that referred to this phenomenon as the 80-20 rule, right? The Pareto distribution, which I don't even think is correct, but when I had came up with the phenomenon, when I had noticed it, when I had said it, and a lot of people, in my comment section were really befuddled by it, and I actually had to have a young lady come in and kind of clarify and say, nah, even I've noticed this thing where, women are funneling up, or younger women are trying to all date the same type of men. What's interesting about this phenomenon, is the fact that the data on online dating, I think particularly it was OkCupid, and even on Tinder statistics, have come to verify this truth that I had recognized back in high school. I'd say, yeah, legitimately a little 10, 12 years ago. Which I'm not making this video to just say, you know, go on my whole razor fist meme, F you, I was right. But I am saying that this has been going on for quite some time, and it doesn't really seem to be stopping or kind of leveling out. Now, there's lots of issues with the 80-20 rule. One which I'm going to highlight kind of biologically, and then I'm going to highlight socially. So a couple of friends and I were watching this video together where this young lady was talking about when she got herpes. Excuse me. It's an hour-long presentation of her recounting her experiences of getting herpes. But there was one point in particular I thought was interesting. And that was she had somehow found herself in a group chat with other girls that had sex with the dude that she presumes gave her herpes. Did you catch what I just said there, viewer? Did you hear what I said? In case what I said kind of was a little bit glossed over, she was in a group chat with other girls talking about the same guy. Let's go ahead and just play what these young ladies were saying about this young man that they all chose to have sex with.
The next screenshot, it said, I thought it was just me. No, it was him. Musted, dusted, and crusted. Cannot be trusted. And then another girl was like, I was like, damn, my pH keeps fucking up around him. That's fucking crazy. Oh God. I was like, okay, my coochie don't stink. What the fuck did you do to me? And then that's when another girl said, he's sick as fuck. Gonna fuck up my pH balance, then demand to eat me out. Laughed my ass off. No, literally. Y'all, I'm glad I ain't let him dirty grills. I'm glad I ain't let them dirty grills near this pussy. That's what another girl said. Let's keep going. Man, the only reason I never said anything about him was because I was scared to see the back of my hair on someone's story or Twitter. Him before. I'ma have your legs shaking. Him after. Did I do a good job? Because I feel like I did a good job. Oh God, he tried to give his phone out and I was like, yeah, no. And then that's when another girl said, my dumb ass let him. Y'all, not I. Oh no, she was like, yeah, not I. And then that's when another girl said, he got so many pics, like I'm in some shit if he's feeling more petty than usual. Fuck, if he posted, lock his ass up for revenge porn. That's a case. At least he have his own place in jail and furniture. That's what another girl said. Let's keep it going. Child porn. OMG. Yeah, how old are you? 17. Y'all, this girl was 17, bro. When I think about it, child porn for real. Like, how old are you when you messing with a 17-year-old? Let me not talk, though, because I was 17 back then when I first got diagnosed with herpes. I was 17 messing with him back, like, last year. So now that I'm looking at this, I'm like, 17. Ugh, ouch. But anyway, let's keep going. Honey. That's what somebody else said. Like, baby, you 17? But let's keep it going. Yeah, that's how I met him, LOL. My first mistake. Did anyone get tested after him? Yeah, I had BV. BV? That's like somebody questioning, like, what is BV? BV is bacterial diagnosis. But let's get into the chat. Bacterial diagnosis, not an STD, but you can get it if a male has multiple female partners. And obviously, LOL. She said obviously in all caps, which obviously, because it was like 10, 9, 8. It was hella females in this group chat, like talking about this one guy. And it was like called Surviving Washington Boulevard. Like, I'm gonna cross out their faces and names when I put the screenshots up. Because honestly, I don't know who felt comfortable knowing. Like, I just don't wanna hit no boundaries.
Now, the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of things that can be commentated on in this type of scenario. For one, every single lady on there should hold in one big fat L. Did I do that correctly? Is that, or should I do like this? It doesn't matter. All of them should hold the L on that one because I mean, do I need to explain it? Okay, for the slow people in the classroom, for those of y'all who are a little bit not quick to the uptake, if the guy is so grimy and dirty, what does that say about you and your ability to mate select? Which, by the way, if there are ladies in the audience who are confused about like why young men are not particularly fond of ladies who are promiscuous, it is because we recognize that the men you choose to have sex with is indeed a reflection of how you see yourself. In fact, what's interesting still is some men who are a little sharper, at least socially, and sometimes just as far as intelligence is concerned, also recognize that young ladies love to judge themselves based on the type of men that they can attract. It's a really strange metric, you know. Young ladies are offended when men they aren't attracted to want to talk to them, and they think that there's something wrong with them. I've seen them say this numerous times. And so, as young men who are a little quicker on the uptake who see that, then look at the past men that you've had sex with and find themselves not only greatly befuddled by the fact that you would have selected that man for the potential of having children, but also befuddled that somehow your standards are getting raised, or also stranger still, how you can be upset with the man that you chose to be incredibly intimate with. But, tailing that discussion to the side, what's interesting is kind of the entire scenario by itself. The entire scenario by itself, if we just kind of look at the umbrella, is multiple women are having sex with the same guy. And what's interesting still is they are all really kind of comfortable talking about it. Now, this is just me. Perhaps I am just built a little different, but I will never in the history of time and space ever talk to other men about the sex I had with some other girl. In fact, I actually, unfortunately, I wish I hadn't, but I actually had sex. First time I had sex was, what was it, like almost a year ago with a woman that was in an open marriage, which honestly really it's not a good thing at all. I was just declare it's really not a good thing. But you know, the first time I ended up having sex with her, I remember feeling a little disappointed. Not because like I didn't enjoy having sex with her, I did, but like it was because it wasn't really that magnificent of an experience. I mean, I'm glad I have the frame of reference now. I think it's good to have a frame of reference, but like in reality, it wasn't really as cracked up as so many people made it out to be. And I might need to talk about the disillusionment of like, you know, the hypersexual males one of these days. Shoot, that might be its title. But the point is, you know, I still don't, I've never really liked talking about my sexual experiences, like specifically with like anyone. You know, and while that was technically the first time I actually had sex, you know, I mean, there have been times I've been sexual with women that I just always kept to myself. And the reason why was because I always felt that there was a strong power in intimacy. There's like a strong power in kind of just keeping things between you and that person. That's kind of what makes it special. It's an experience that you two people share, and you know, you move on and you go along. You know, it's just between you two, and that's just what you guys did with each other. You know, it's you know, I'm a person who over intellectualizes everything, and even it's hard for me to put into words about like why intimacy is so special. And even to me, you know, I have to think harder about that to really articulate it for you guys. But you know, talking about my sexual experiences just always felt a little off base to me. It felt wrong. It didn't feel like it was an experience with the person, but more like what's the word I'm looking for? It's not really hard for me. Kind of more like something that's casual, that's simple, like something that's not as special as it really should be. I always kind of feel like it kind of denigrates the experience. And so, you know, seeing these girls, you know, be so casual about this situation and talk about the situation made my ears perk up just a little bit, because you have to remember the context here. The video that I just played for you guys is an excerpt from an about hour-long presentation of this girl explaining her experience getting herpes. You know, the problem with the whole 80-20 rule from a biological standpoint is rather simple. And that is, whenever the top male gets a venereal disease, it trickles down into the general population of young ladies. The 80-20 rule is a biological hazard, and that's like, that's not even putting that like loosely. It's legitimately a really big issue. So, and the truth of the matter is, I think only really salty males can kind of really recognize this, Even I was salty in the past, right? But I think that this is kind of an issue that moves a little bit beyond being salty. A lot of young ladies like to defend their actions or defend their behaviors by talking about incels or talking about, males who are low on the sexual marketplace totem pole. And they kind of dismiss this type of content offhand because it's just men who are bitter. But the reality of the situation, or reality that needs to kind of be commented upon or like really recognized, particularly my young women who are caught in this, who are, I'm just going to be honest, rather short-sighted and sometimes just downright stupid, is the fact that when you are funneling up to, quote, high-value males, or when you are funneling up to high-status males, or when you are funneling up to highly promiscuous males, you are putting yourself in a very, very dangerous position. Biologically so. Not even just that, but honestly, saying all of this stuff kind of sounds a little bit like, I'm gonna be honest, straight up common sense now, doesn't it? So, what we witnessed was kind of a young lady that really didn't have a great amount of, like, I guess you could say self-awareness. But what happens when they do gain some self? What happens when a young lady does become privy to the 80-20 rule? Well, I have happened to found a TikTok where that young lady did indeed obtain some self-awareness. She did recognize the same phenomena I recognize. But you'll find the way that she interprets it is a lot different than me. I won't spoil it, so we'll just watch it together.
So I was just watching this TikTok video, and it was talking about how the top 20% of men on dating apps, like the most attractive men on dating apps, like the top 20% match with the top 80% of women. So that means that they're just swiping right and just like, okay. Now, if you're an attractive woman and you're like in the top 20% of attractiveness on these dating apps, then you're probably only matching with that 20% of men. And that 20% of men, well, they're picking from 80% of the dating app. They ain't looking to settle down. I don't think I'm mad hearing that statistic, but it's definitely disheartening. And I'm not sitting here being like, oh, woe is me. I'm so hot and I can't get anybody. I just think all of us just have way too much access now. The hot guys are guys, and so they want to F everything, so they're just swiping on everything, and they're matching with 80%. The hot women are, just forced to see in this photo of these guys and aren't being able to get to know them on a deeper level and, actually get to know them as a person. I just, can it be the 90s again and, someone can just come up to me in a grocery store and give me their number and then, leave a nice, voicemail on my answering machine? It's too much to ask.
Yes.
Now, there are a couple of things I find particularly interesting about that. One of which is, this might be better to explain this in meme format rather than just outright. So excuse me while I grab my imaginary newspaper and read this headline. Yes, right here. It says, Meteor strikes Earth, women most affected. I think of that old Hillary Clinton quote. Women are always the primary victims of war. They lose their husbands, their brothers, and their sons. Hillary Clinton, she said something to that effect. And I just think it's funny how somehow this is still a problem for women. This is women are the ones who are most affected by this. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who preview my channel and people who are a little sharper kind of could recognize why the 80-20 rule might be a little bit of a huge problem socially. And that issue might be best explained like this. Chemistry 101, Doom. What happens when you create a society of young men that can't have women to have families with? What happens when you create a society of young men that can't have relationships with young ladies? It eats itself. That's what happens. It collapses. It destroys itself. Because what happens is you craft an environment of individuals that aren't invested in your society. You craft a bunch of men who don't want society to continue. You craft a bunch of men that don't like the environment they're in. So why would they choose to fight to protect it? Why would they want it to keep going? Save just for themselves, save just for their own selfishness. You're even crafting not just nihilistic men, but selfish men. You're crafting men who are going to attempt to try to be that top 20% of males that do what, young ladies? Smash and dash you, that manipulate you, that destroy you, that hurt you mentally and emotionally, that impregnate you and then abandon your children. Now, of course, what the young lady response would indeed be is, well, you can't blame me because the top 20% of men are crappy people. Correct, I particularly can't. Due to the fact that people should always have integrity and due to the fact that people should always have honor for individuals in their society, people should just treat each other well. The unfortunate reality is that's just not how people work. And to have an expectation like that only hurts, well, everyone. In conclusion, I don't think that the 80-20 rule should be something that's taken quite literally. So I don't think anyone should really think of it as quite literally 80% of young ladies are only having sex with like the top 20%. I mean, more realistically, it's more of a bottlenecking effect. So women are going to have more sexual experiences and oftentimes going to be able to have relationships with men a lot easier than men are. And women are oftentimes going to be sharing the same kind of young male. If not the same kind of young male, sometimes the same kind of male. So to actually create percentages of what's actually going on, I think is virtually impossible. But that's not really why the rule exists or why the phrasing of the rule exists. The point of saying this is to highlight the fact that there is a huge funneling up of young ladies trying to date the same type of men. And the same type of men that young ladies are after are oftentimes not very good people. They're not people that are oftentimes underscored by, dare I would say, as I always do, integrity, my honor, my virtue, or just by some common decency. Oftentimes, it's the worst type of people that are able to have lots of sex with women, or lots of sex in general. In fact, most people that are rather promiscuous, which honestly should be discussed by itself, are actually not really the kindest or the greatest of people. But we'll savor that discussion for another time. What's important to understand here is that when you're actually looking at the 80-20 rule, when you look at this stuff in effect, you see that it is quite literally a biological hazard as well as a social hazard. Biologically, literally you'll have individuals that are spreading a lot of venereal diseases, and you'll have people that are making a lot of children that just aren't going to be able to be taken care of very well. I mean, say some step-parent comes in and tries to offset that, that deficit of not having a father around. You also have to factor in that society, or societally, I guess, if that's even a bloody word to be used here, you are creating a lot of young men that have no interest in a family, that have no interest in women, or you're creating a lot of men that are angry with women. And you guys all know, you guys all know, you guys have seen this, and it is something that I think young ladies really need to take seriously. I don't know if they are, but they really should, because crafting a society that's filled with young men that have no interest in keeping it going is a recipe for complete disaster. And again, as I keep saying, this kinda is something that falls squarely on the shoulders of both of us. At the same time, I understand young men being distraught with this reality, but I believe that modern society is something absolutely worth fighting for, and we need to continue to try to keep it going. In my honest opinion, I really do think that modern society is something worth fighting for. And it does really, really, really suck. And I think it is really, really, really dangerous to start crafting a lot of young men that just are not interested in keeping this thing going. Not just for my own benefit and protection, but for the benefit and protection of children that are around and the benefit of protection of, well, you young ladies too who are out there. You know, young men are the lifeblood that keeps society going. And what happens when there's a blood clot in a system? I think you know. I don't think I need to explain. So, I'm thinking that perhaps I might need to start creating some more videos where I kind of talk about the life-giving beauty that is femininity. And I know, I'm just some nigga on the internet. So it's going to be really interesting to see me talk about how important femininity is, but, well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out. So that being said, I assume that you guys got something out of today's video, and if you did, man, go and click the like button. And shoot, go and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below, and as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.